Okay, now let's look at identifying the support points for our truss. We're just going to, in this example, we're just going to use two. We're going to use a starting point and then maybe some point along, any point along this, and we'll make this variable. And it'll be adjustable depending on how many points we actually have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the first point, and I'm going to make a couple of watch boxes up here because that'll allow me to just a place to tie off where we're pulling our points from. So our first important point is our starting of our truss at L1. That's always going to be the same, and we're going to use that as the first place where we fixture a point. And it doesn't really show up in blue because I don't know why that doesn't happen. And the other one is we want the list of all the points that go along there. So we can pull back here and find the list where we've added all the lists together and we flatten them out. So we have 7 points for the bottom of the chord. So I'm going to pull that one up and place that one in the watch list too, in the second watch box. And those are all the bottom points of the chord. So they all have a 0 value for Y, and they have the height of the chord for Z, and then the different coordinates as they go out along the x-axis. So we can select these points, but right now we can't visualize them. We have no idea where they're highlighted. So we're actually going to make just a clever little piece of geometry, clever if you want to call it that. We're going to make a little cone. So let's look under solids, and we'll get a cone. And we want this to be relatively simple. We want it to be an endpoint, a start point, and a radius. And what we'll do first is we'll just make you see a cone pops up right away because it's at 0, 0, 0. And we want something kind of similar to that. Let's, before we make the first one, let's kind of look at the idea of how we would make the other ones right now. So we really want to pick out a point along this x-axis. Well, we want to pick out one of the numbers in here in order to put a support. If we want it to be really cantilevered, we'd pick the 1 point. If we want it to be a simply supported beam, we would pick the end point. So we really need to use a list tool to grab out the value we want. So I think the inspect get item at index, and if you look at that, it allows you to pick out from a list anything at any given index. So we'll use that, and I'll select it, and we're going to feed that list into here, and nothing will come out yet because we haven't told it what index point we want to select from. So I'm going to use a number slider, and we'll just set this up so that it falls on solid increments, and we'll make sure it doesn't have too many divisions to it, and we'll feed that in, and we'll make that our start point. Unfortunately, that's going to be on an angle because we don't have the end point needs to be just an offset from the other one. So let's just look at what happens here. Just let me make it the end point. Pull off the start point, and watch what happens when I move the slider here. So we can connect now to any point along that surface. And what is it telling us right away is that I picked the wrong thing. I must have picked the top chord. So let's try this list. I'll pull that into the watch list. Zero, 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 that's fine. And so if we move this along, you can see how the end point now is moving along. But we're really making the cone in the wrong direction right now. So what we want to do is we want to create a little bit of, we want that start point to be offset in a direction that's usable to us. So what we need to do is we want to take the point that we have actually selected and then kind of offset it. So we can use a couple of ways to do that, but one of them is to grab the geometry, find a point, and then look at how we can translate a point in a direction. So we're going to use the point add tool. And we have, we need a vector and a point. We have the point, but we don't have a vector yet. And the vector is, like it'll be a vector in the z direction. So let's look for a vector. And that's in the abstract. A vector. And we want a z-axis. Well, we actually want a vector that has a length to it. So let me delete that. Remove, I'm sorry. We want a vector by coordinate. So x, y, z. That'll allow us to give a little depth to our vector, point it into a direction, move that endpoint over. And so let's come up with something for a z value. I'm going to just use a code block for now, just to put a number in. We'll just put a 1 in it for now, in the z direction. And we'll add that to that. And we'll hook that up to the start point. And now we have a cone out at the very end. We're out at the 6 point. If I can move it all the way back, so we can put it anywhere we want, but it's really going in the wrong direction. So let's make this a -1. Okay, so now we've actually got our load point, our variable load point, able to move and look like something relatively sensical about what a support would be in a structural system. The only thing we don't have is our first point. So we need to actually do a list create to grab that second point out and add it to the whole system. So let's do list create. And we want to add 2 points together. We want the vector, where is the one? The vector that, or the point that we get out at the index. And we want the point we get out at the beginning. So now we have our 2 points. They'll show up as points. And we want to feed those both into this. And we want to feed them into the endpoint. Okay, so I don't know if I did that too fast or too convoluted. So I'll leave these watch boxes up. I'll shrink down our slider. So we're pulling our one value off of our list. We're using our starting one. We're bringing those two together. And by using a vector, we're offsetting that point a certain amount. Let's make it a little bit larger so you can see how that varies. There we have our support points, our cones now off of a little further off of the truss itself. And that gives us our 2 bottom load points. And we could move this over to any position that we want now by just moving that slider. So we'll leave it at that. And the next thing we want to do is really just duplicate the same concept, but by applying loads to the top. So what I'm going to do right away is grab this whole group, make a group out of it, and we'll call that group supports, truss support. Okay, so the next thing we need to look at then will be the loads that we're applying, and we'll do that in the next clip.